Hello and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. And now a moment for our sponsors. I want to highly recommend you get Acquisition Aficionado magazine. Every month, Acquisition Aficionado magazine brings you tactics for business buying and selling you won't find anywhere else. Learn firsthand from industry leaders who share their success stories, featuring in-depth interviews and stories from leading figures in the business acquisition industry. This multi-platform mobile magazine speaks to acquisition entrepreneurs wherever they are in the journey. And I want you to visit acquisitionaficionado.com today. Hello and welcome to the How to Exit podcast. Today I'm here with Mike Swigunski, and I hope I got your name right, brother. He is one of the founders of Empire Flippers. He's a best-selling author, a TEDx speaker, and a world traveler. He's a digital nomad. So I'm really excited to hear your story today. Did I even get close with your name?
Yeah, so just two things there. Like, I'm technically not a founder of Empire Flippers. If you want to rephrase that, I just don't want it to be.
Okay.
Just early employee. Employee number 4.
An employee number 4. I always that's on me, and we'll leave this part in there too. It's on me. I consider anybody in the first 5 or 10 employees of a company like one of the founders, right? You don't get the title necessarily. But man, you're doing some of the hard work. If you're one of the first 10 employees somewhere, you're pulling hours and getting stuff done. So, yeah. So that's on me. It wasn't on you. It wasn't in the show notes, and we'll make sure this part stays in there too. Let's just be organic and real because, that's just the way we keep it here. So let's do your origin story, man. Just tell me kind of, the running joke has always been, you were born and now you ended up on a show about mergers and acquisitions. How in the hell did you end up here?
Yeah, it's definitely been a long journey to get to where I'm at now. Traveling to 100 countries while doing it also, and I'm originally from Wildwood, Missouri, so just getting out of there is, quite a journey in itself. So basically, I got started with traveling at a pretty late age. Like, I hadn't stepped on a plane till I was like 18 was my first international trip. But I just kind of really gravitated and fell in love with travel, primarily through a family trip to Italy. Then the next year, I decided to study abroad. I was studying business. There was a study abroad program through our business school where you could actually get credits and, get ahead in the school. And so it's just kind of a win-win sort of situation where went abroad to Italy, absolutely loved it, was organizing events with the American students, the Italian students, and just really wanted to find a way to go back. So as soon as study abroad finished, I applied to become a student manager for the University of Missouri study abroad program. And so they essentially selected me to be a student manager for the Prague kind of program. That was, at the time, I didn't know it, but they hired me and they're like, hey, the Prague program is about to be shut down if we don't get X amount of students, which was double than what they had the year before. So this was kind of my first forte to marketing, sales, kind of running a business. And it was a really cool sort of 2-year internship kind of deal with the university. And basically you ran the whole show. You're teaching courses through the university, doing the marketing, sales, and we were able to grow the program from 7 students to 30, which was the maximum. And then the next year, max it out again at 45 students, and essentially kind of save the trajectory of this program where it's Prague was at this time such a hidden gem. And it just became this thing where it was I would tell everyone I knew about it, hey, you got to come to Prague. And half the classes were friends or, friends of friends. So that was kind of my first sort of step into working and traveling, right? Where I was living in America, but traveling to Europe. And I was like, okay, I'm graduating. I saw 2 very clear paths. A corporate job, I had some offers from corporate jobs my senior year, or I had this last, hey, I'm going to go over to Europe, take my last group of students there. And I'm like, okay, I want to just book a flight, move to Europe, see if I can make it work over there. I just loved it. And within a month or so, I was able to find a job at the university in Prague teaching financial economics, and booked a one-way flight there, and 2 months later had a job offer. And again, that was that light bulb moment where I'm like, I can live anywhere and still develop my career, make a good income, and still travel at the same time. That was that light bulb moment for me where it just all sort of clicked. And that was kind of like how I got started. And then that's like what I call phase one, right?
Awesome. And then, like, what was it about Prague that you liked? I mean, you were pretty young at the time, probably like 19, 20?
Yeah, so I was when I graduated, I would say I was about 22. I started
Mm-hmm.
teaching at the university. So like my first college class I was teaching, I was probably around 20. Then 22, I was teaching financial economics as a professor in Prague. So it was a very wild thing because most of the students were actually older than me, which was crazy.
So when you left the college scene, what was your first venture into something entrepreneurial?
Yeah, so I would say like my first sort of like my jump from there was I spent a few years living in Europe. I loved it, but I just kind of again I think it was a very cushy job because I was working 4 hours, like actually teaching 4 hours a week. It was a
Mm-hmm.
very European style culture and like really good kind of like if when you take the hours to like income, it was good for my age, and
Mm-hmm.
I was able to really travel and explore and gain some experience. The reason I left is again, I had so much ambition and I didn't see this as the path that was right for me with a young person who's hungry to go down. It's kind of more, hey, if you're in your 50s or 60s and you want to do research and, really, I think it's more better suited for somebody at that life stage in their life. And so my jump was I wanted to move to Australia. So I moved back to the US, got a contract working at Wells Fargo on the trading floor. And the whole agreement was just to work there for 3 months, save up money. But it did give me a very wide awakening to what I didn't want to do. At this time, I had never worked, an office job. And trading floor at Wells Fargo sounds cool. It was not not fun. Like it's just,
Doesn't sound cool to me at all.
yeah, it's not like Wolf of Wall Street. That's for sure. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was a very powerful contrast because I had all this freedom, and then for that to be taken away, just to get a paycheck. And for me, it was the big driver was, hey, I'm doing this temporarily. I'm doing this so I can move out to Australia and save up some money. And so that was like my big jump was I basically showed up, got a working holiday visa in Australia, which is very cool for Americans. You can just apply for these and live and work in Australia for a year. Most people pick fruit or do like a backpacker job, but I was like, again, I'm very career focused, career driven. I
Mm-hmm.
want to get paid, but I also want to learn and have some growth. So as soon as I got there, within a week, I was applying for jobs 50, 60 hours a week because I didn't have much money. So it was like sink or swim. And basically, I landed a job at a tech startup, and I felt like I almost had a competitive edge because so many of the Americans or foreigners were going after these backpacker jobs, but nobody was really going after these like higher paid tech startup jobs. So this was again another big milestone for me because I was able to work a hybrid remote job living in Sydney. I was living in Bondi, which was again very interesting, but it also had a little bit of this like entrepreneurial tech startup community where there was a team of 5 or 6 of us. There were some developers, and that was kind of this really good introduction to entrepreneurship and how it works. Like I've done stuff like flipping on Craigslist before this, but this was kind of that more active exposure to entrepreneurship with structure, right? And so I loved Australia. I absolutely probably would have stayed there longer term, but another opportunity kind of fell on my lap where during this time when I was living in Prague, I had a mentor who was from South Korea, and he was also a professor, became a really close mentor of mine. He said, hey, you should apply for this MBA position or scholarship through the university that I'm at, and I'll write you a recommendation because I've seen what you can do, what you did for the study abroad program and all these other things that you've achieved, and I think you'd be a great fit. So I applied, got interviewed, and eventually got accepted for a full ride to study my MBA in South Korea. And it was like again, even with that, I was like, oh, well, I still need to make money and I still need to, be able to have something. And they were great. Like this MBA program they were really like, it was all paid, school, books, travel, accommodation. They even set me up with like some work opportunities. So that was like, again, one of these pivotal moments where I'm like, do I want to go down this path to a country and culture that I didn't really know much about? And so I decided to go down that path, and I spent 2.5 years living and studying and working in South Korea. And again, it was a wonderful experience. And I was living in Gwangju, which is a little bit of a smaller. I always joked, it's like a small town of like 3 million people.
Oh, wow.
But most people don't know about it. And I absolutely love like the classmates there. Like eventually they treated me like, younger brother, very accepting. It was just, looking back, just such a phenomenal experience living and having this opportunity to also give back and kind of share my perspective for them. They were just so curious about, what's life like growing up in the US and, what American culture is like. And there's just kind of these two people who were like brought up very differently, and all the classmates were just a very diverse mix. So overall, it was a really great experience. And so again, I think looking back, it's the typical journey that a lot of people go through. When you're at school, you have a lot of time, but not enough money. And then when you're working, you have more money, but not enough time. And so it really showed me these contrasts where I'm like, I want time and I want money. How can I actually do that? And I didn't figure, it took me years to kind of figure that out. But during this time in Korea, I started writing and I started a blog. And I'm like, okay. And the main reason I started this is because people had kind of realized, oh, you're the travel guy. What should I do when I go to this city, or where should I stay? And I was sending people like, a 10-page Facebook message. And I'm like, I should just turn this into a blog because I can add photos and do all these other things and then maybe make a little bit of money off advertisers. So this was a cool moment where I got into blogging, affiliate websites, building websites, and it also helped me land a gig freelance writing for a radio station in South Korea for like being kind of an expat writer. So that was, I would say, my first online business. It made money. It kind of paid for some travel. It was nothing like crazy income, but it was one of these things that it opened up doors for me in the future, right? And it really led to getting that job at the radio station, getting jobs later, and I'll go into explain kind of how, but that was another kind of really interesting portion of kind of this whole journey, right? I guess it kind of leads to the next, like jumping off point is like, okay, I graduated from my MBA in South Korea, and I really wanted to work there, and my whole thing was I wanted to work there, but I didn't want to teach English because, again, nothing wrong with that. And I think it's one of the best jobs to like get yourself abroad. I just knew that wasn't the path I wanted to personally go, especially with like, I was more into marketing, branding, startups, that kind of scene. So I wanted to try to find something similar to that. But the downside to Korea, and I spent 6 months looking for jobs, kind of working odd jobs. I did everything from like voice acting to modeling to, like I worked for a marketing startup part-time, and just nothing really panned out. And I was just kind of working these like 3 or 4 odd jobs, but nothing really was able to like get me what that next step was. And the biggest issue was when you graduate, you essentially get put onto a searching for work visa in Korea. So if you want to teach English, they have a whole separate category for that. It's very easy, straightforward. You get that visa, you can get a teaching job. But this looking for work visa, it's kind of like you're in purgatory, where a lot of the jobs to work at an actual Korean company, you can't have that because you don't have the work visa. You have the looking for work visa. So you're just kind of in this weird spot. And after 6 months, I'm like, hey, I need to try something else. This just isn't my spot long term. So I had such a good experience in Australia that I looked into working holiday visas. And again, New Zealand has a very similar program, but it was actually free for Americans at the time. So applied, got approved, moved to New Zealand, did the same thing I tried in Australia. My full-time job was to find a job. And I found another tech startup. They hired me within, I think, 2 weeks of getting to New Zealand. And it just goes to show, I think people who are looking for work, you have to change your approach. But if you go in it and get at the volume and you have like a good foundation, you can find a job fairly quickly in a foreign country. So I found a job, tech startup. Long story short is I worked there for about 4 months. They ran out of money, which, unfortunately, it was a travel magazine startup kind of like hybrid thing that just in 2016 wasn't the time to do this. So ended up living there 4 months, spent 2 months traveling. I hitchhiked the whole South Island of New Zealand. And it was, again, one of these things where the thing I love about travel is every day, everything you're doing, it's a new thing. It's pushing you outside of your comfort zone. And I would say hitchhiking was one of those things where I tried it in Korea, and it's just not really built for that because it's not part of their culture, but it's really ingrained into the New Zealand Kiwi culture. And so I spent a whole month just hitchhiking around, met so many people from all over the world. And again, it was one of these things that just pushed me out of my comfort zone to try something new, to kind of just sit out there and talk to strangers and, assess in a few seconds, do I feel comfortable and safe getting into a car with this stranger? Overall, it was a great experience. And New Zealand was one of those things where after 2 months of not working, I'm like, okay, I'm looking for that next thing. And a friend of a friend that I'd met in Korea, he was working at Empire Flippers at the time, and they were hiring for somebody with marketing and sales experience. So he kind of sent me a job opening. I applied for it, and was accepted at a perfect time where I was like, again, kind of at a crossroads where I had 6 months left on my Kiwi New Zealand working holiday visa, but I knew this had bigger potential. It was like a lower initial pay, but much more upside. I knew I could get a job probably earning more like from day one. But I knew that, hey, this was something where I loved the company. I loved everything about it. I was getting in early. They seemed to have a better, business model than some of the other tech startups I'd started working for. And so I booked a flight out to Vietnam and joined Empire Flippers as employee number 4. And we were all living together in like a really cool penthouse in Ho Chi Minh City. And it just really, that decision to move out there just really opened my mind and eyes to the online acquisition space, the online website industry. And one of the things that they hired me on was because they liked that I had worked for other tech startups, but they really liked that I had built and managed my own website. So again, it just shows you that you don't really know how everything's going to connect, but by building that website back in Korea, I was able to essentially use that to open more doors for me. So even though the blog and stuff kind of was not a huge, money maker, it still in the long run opened a lot of doors for me because I was able to kind of build that experience myself. And I always say, if you don't have the opportunity out there, if it's not coming to you, you have to make it and you have to put in the effort yourself, right?
Interesting. Man, you've got a really cool life story, right? It's the reminds me a little bit of that. Was that guy that was really boring on the like he was a he was in a magazine marketing. Oh, I can't remember the name of the movie right now, but he ends up traveling the world and doing all kind of crazy stuff and hitchhiking around and going to do all that. Something Life of Walter something. Anyway, going back.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
You think about things like, here in the United States, like, oh, don't hitchhike. Now, if I'm alone, I'll still pick up a hitchhiker here. I'm old enough and strong enough and been, in around hand-to-hand combat. I don't know if I can handle myself pretty well. So, and I can access people pretty quickly. One of the things I want to bring up is you traveling the world, in my mind, makes you a better entrepreneur because you get the different culture experiences. I have a fairly good military buddy of mine. I say fairly good. He's like I was military intelligence. He stayed in it when we got out, so he disappeared. It's fairly classified stuff, so he'll
Yeah.
disappear for 5 or 10 years, and he pops up on Facebook, goes, "I'm alive, I'm still good," and then he's in the Philippines or he's somewhere weird. He's on vacation. He never pops up where he's actually working because of what he does. That said, he made quite a bit of money because he travels the world, and one of the things he likes to do is he'll see something that going really well. Like one of the first products he ever did is these weird blue colored plates that was in South Korea. He was in Korea for a while,
Yeah.
and he started getting manufacturing and licensing deals with the U.S. He's like, I think this would really work in the U.S. So he went to the manufacturer and said, hey, what if I got you distribution to the United States? What would you do? And they gave him a percentage of it, and he just sat there on the phone, dialing, distributors and putting them in warehouses, and basically got distribution for him. That's all he did, and he took a royalty off of it. And he got really good at picking things that would work cross markets. So, and he was a defense contractor. So he made decent money as a defense contractor and did a lot of cool things with the investment by just seeing things in different cultures and how they're using products and how they do things and going, why don't we do that in the United States?
No, you definitely, like, I would say from traveling, like a couple things that I've seen, you develop a different lens, like you're mentioning, for what works in this culture and how you can correlate that to your business. So you're picking up that. You're also, like, for most businesses, especially now, you're learning how to communicate and hire other cultures and work with international teams. But I would say the biggest one for entrepreneurship is, like, when you're traveling, you're making a lot of decisions without a lot of information, and you're having to do it in real time. From as little as picking a restaurant or what you're going to do for the day, you don't always have the best intel, and so you have to do this on a lot of things in a business, right? You have to make hard decisions on things that you don't know the outcome, and you have to learn from those. And over time, you kind of get a better decision making process. And I think that's been something that's really helpful. And also, entrepreneurship, just taking risk and traveling is like, there's a lot of places you've been in the world where it might be, a little bit more risky, right? So, like, for example, a few months ago, I was just in Ukraine, right? There's sirens going off every 30 minutes to an hour. There's calculated risk that you take in life, and you have to learn how to calculate that, justify it, and do it in the best way. And I'm a very type of person who likes to calculate the risk, figure it out, and then take action as fast as possible. Not to say that it's reckless, but everything I do is very thought out, but I try to do it at speed.
It's funny is I would never consider myself risk adverse. I mean, I was an adrenaline junkie as a youth. I did martial arts. I raced dirt bikes and rode motocross. I was never good at motocross, but I raced it. My sponsors were me, myself, and a couple parts company because I spent so much money in with buying parts from them because I would break them. They would sponsor me a little bit and give me parts and stuff, but I was never great in my youth at it. That said, I loved it. I wouldn't consider myself risk averse, but I can tell you right now, I wouldn't knowingly travel to a war zone. I did battle damage assessment for a while in the military where we looked at what buildings looked like after they blew up, and you just sit there and think. And some of the satellite imagery is pretty detailed. I was like, I wouldn't have wanted to been in any of those. So I think maybe that's my adversity. Like, I wouldn't go to Israel right now because I think at some point that somebody's going to get something through their Iron Curtain. And I wouldn't go to the Ukraine at all. So...
Yeah. I would say, like, from my extensive travel, like, I consider the news, but I weight it a lot differently than I think the average person does. I put a bigger weight on people who have feet on the ground and who've known the situation before and after. So my assessment and, like, risk calculation was like, hey, I'm going to talk to 5 or 6 locals who are currently in the place that I'm going to. How is it getting in and out? How has it been day to day? What are the stats for, like, let's just say fatalities in the area? So there's a lot of things you can assess. And, like, after that, I'm going to be there for a week. You're able to kind of calculate out and make assessments there. But I will say, in general, with travel, I think most places overall, the news is not reality, right? In general, do your own research. And every situation, every country, and every city is very different. But what I will say is talk to locals who've been there, talk to expats who are living there currently. And it's a great way to meet people, especially you can join Facebook groups on, expat in certain city, and you can connect with some people who give you the actual intel. So don't put all the weight on news. Maybe I'll weight it 5 to 10% in the decision making process, but a lot of times the news is, I've written and used to write for Forbes and write for Entrepreneur. I understand the whole business model behind these businesses. They're doing shock stuff to get clicks, more advertisers, more money. And that's the thing. Like these types of bold headlines get shared 5 to 10 times more. So no wonder they keep writing this. So I would say that's kind of my recommendation or thought process, at least how I assess risk with traveling and going to new situations, is put a bigger emphasis on talking to locals and what it's like there than the news.
It's interesting. We used to go to Acapulco a lot and the surrounding towns around there, up in the Tasco and the old
Right.
silversmithing towns and stuff like that. Myself and some people, and we took a guide with us because we were buying stuff like art. We brought art back in the United States and like silver pieces that were sculpted and art type of things for a brand that we ran. But anyway, we usually had a local security, I guess you would call him a bodyguard or
Right.
whatever. He's ex-military guy. And he would go with us when we had either a lot of cash on us or we had something valuable with us, some art we were bringing back and, having shipped out. But he would take us into the local villages down there, and he's like, the news will tell you this is a horrible place, but these are all families. Nobody's ever done anything here. But we stopped, and like the cool thing was the culture was so much different. The families would walk out in the street and go, "My mom's cooking dinner. You want to buy dinner?" And in Spanish, and he's like, "Hey, I've eaten here. Her mom, this kid's mom's amazing." But you have to either stop and talk to him or run over him because the kids would stand right in front of your car in these little villages, right? And
Yeah.
you'd have to come to a stop. And so our local guy was like, "No, this is a good one. You won't get sick in here. She boils water to cook all of her, to clean her utensils and stuff because as Americans we got weak stomachs." Yeah, I ate in more than one person's room. Like we're sitting down because they would stop people on the side of the road. The kitchen would be full, and their mom would be making all kinds of local foods and stuff. And it was just an amazing culture to be in. That's the best. That's the best travel I can relate to in your realm there. Even then, we went down there for vacation and ended up going. Wait a sec. We went up to Tasco once, which used to be a silver mine, and there's beautiful art where they carve things out of silver and bracelets and jewelry and stuff. And we lived in California, not too far from some of the art galleries and some of these little vacation towns. So we started we created our own brand. We brought, we would bring stuff back, have it engraved underneath that brand. So it was kind of like a pseudonym or a brand name on the art. So, but we would import stuff and then put it in the galleries, mark it up and sell it. And
Wow.
it was we ended up selling that business years and years and years ago because I was going through a divorce with my first wife. But that said, it was an interesting thing, and it was just because I just seen an opportunity there, and I was like, people in the United States would love this. Why
Yeah.
doesn't this guy, and a lot of times they would create these. The best thing we ever did is this huge, I would say huge, probably the size of a basketball. It's hollow on the center, but it was silver, solid silver, and it was a Mustang head, like a horse's head.
Oh, that's cool.
Absolutely beautiful engraving stuff. And the guy didn't even sign his own, like there was no initials on it or nothing. He would sit there and he'd mold stuff that you put it in a mold. He'd carve a clay mold or whatever, pour it in there, and then he would hand finish it, like put the details on it with these tools. And I think we gave $6,000 or $7,000 for that. Brought it to the United States, put it in a gallery, and sold it for $75,000. Right. So
yeah, there's something to finding, stuff overseas and figuring out a good way to bring it to a higher income nation like the U.S. Right.
yeah.
So that is great. We call that. You can do that in the U.S. like retail arbitrage. That's what a lot of stuff on Amazon is now. And again, that's like the fascinating thing at Empire Flippers. I've seen every way in the world that a business and the internet can be monetized. In one way, it opened my eyes and it gave me this, hey, you can make good money on the internet. You can do it in an ethical way. You can do it in a great way that helps a lot of people. What I was saying is like there are a few ways like with retail arbitrage, and you don't have to leave the country, where you just go to Walmart, find something on sale, buy it in bulk, and then sell it on Amazon or eBay, right? That's that's one technique. Again, there's a lot of nuances that go into that, but that is a way that we've seen people do it. The most common way, though, is to source products overseas, have a supplier or manufacturer get certain rates with them, send those products directly to the customer or to a place like Amazon or 3PL or something like that, where they're putting it together and then shipping it out to people. And that's kind of why, there's a big, I guess, boom with e-com, Amazon FBA over the past years. And now, not my favorite business model. My favorite business model after, seeing everything is more digital products and especially software. And that's kind of like working at Empire Flippers. I saw all these different types of business models, all the ways that you're able to scale them, because you don't even see just the flip. You see the flip, the buy, and then the reflip, and you're like, oh, this person scaled this business in 6 months by doing this kind of fairly simple thing. And so that's the thing I love about the digital space is there's unlimited inventory essentially, and you have less platform risk. And that's kind of where a lot of the things I learned at Empire Flippers is like, you see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Again, I think any type of business is going to have risk. An offline business, and I see it every year when I go back to the US, when I go back to St. Louis or Wildwood, the place that was the popular area of the city is a ghost town now. It's heartbreaking to see like all these small businesses have gone out of business just because the traffic or the foot traffic or whatever, that dynamic changed. The same thing can happen online. Amazon can say, hey, our fees are doubling or tripling. Oh, your product's banned. There's people from China out competing you. There's going to be risk in everything. But what I like to find is I like to find businesses where you have more control and less of that platform risk. And software and digital products, again, aren't perfect, but you own more of that. There's more of a barrier to entry because for some of my personal software acquisitions, the developer had been working on it for 10 years at $100 per hour. Think about how much time and energy and effort went into that, and how, in this space, there was no competition. So a competitor to look to enter this exact space is looking at, let's say 2 to 3 years to get something even close, hundreds of thousands of dollars in development work just to get it up and running. And doesn't even solve the other half of the equation, which is, product market fit, getting customers, getting all this SEO traffic, all these other things that can take even longer. So that's why I mean, working at Empire Flippers, it just, that light bulb moment, it's like, hey, why I'm here brokering deals, I'm marketing these deals, and I'm marketing and growing the company. It just gave me like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm walking the walk, but eventually I got to talk the talk. And like, that's what sparked me to kind of have my first acquisitions. And basically I essentially had worked at Empire Flippers for about 4 years. I exited in 2020. And during that time I had published my book in 2018. My book's called Global Career: How to Work Anywhere and Travel Forever. And, it essentially is a practical guide to working and traveling around the world and still like being able to have a good income, being able to get into entrepreneurship. And it kind of follows like the 3 paths of like, going from an office job to remote working to freelancing or, entrepreneurship. And then kind of like also about, online entrepreneurship, especially. And that's the most common path that I see people who want to really control their time, their money, and just be able to work from anywhere in the world. You kind of have to build your own empire. And that was the thing that kind of slowly, I realized, hey, this is amazing. I learned so much. I was able to build something awesome, but it was time to start building my own version or my own sort of businesses, right? And so 2018, I published my book. I built a free job website and a few, offers around that. And the business is called Global Career, which lines up with the book. And a long story short is we help people earn from anywhere. And how we do that is through 3 unique ways. The book helps people. It's helped, hundreds of thousands of people already. That coupled with my remote job website, We've helped people land non-technical remote jobs. That's kind of the entry point, right? Book, job, free job website, helping people, kind of transition over. And I create a ton of free content around how people can get started on YouTube. So that's like the one pillar. The other pillar is with freelancing. We see a lot of people who, hey, I don't want to get another job. I want to be my own boss. I want to be able to figure out a few of these other things. And so that's the other type of avatar that we're looking to help out. And so I have an offer called copysharks.com where we teach people how to become profitable freelance writers within 6 weeks. And we've gotten some crazy results. Nearly 300 students are already graduated and successful writers. And so that is like the next path after that is like, okay, people who want full control, they don't want a side hustle. They just want to build their own business. Then we have an entrepreneurial kind of branch of, global career acquisitions. And it's kind of a twofold. I'm essentially a acquisition advisor helping first-time buyers. So I got 3 deals done this month with first-time buyers. And I also got a deal done on the sell side. And basically what I do is I help first-time buyers go through the whole process. I'm helping them, vet the business because I know exactly what to look for after looking at hundreds and thousands of online businesses. I know the problems that can come up, how to structure the deal in their favor, how to create a win-win negotiation, and how to essentially buy a business that's going to have a lot less risk. And that's kind of what this program does is I walk them through every step of the deal and then afterwards help them implement a growth plan to really grow and scale it. And so my first software acquisition, I got my investment back in 8 months because I was able to use these same sort of techniques to really grow and scale the business. So for me, software and digital products are by far the best. And everyone who comes, I highly suggest people to consider that path.
So are there any industries and stuff that are like, I know AI is making a lot of changes, like for the writing path and stuff like that. I'm a marketing nerd. My MBA is in marketing. I studied under Dan Kennedy for copywriting because
Oh,
my
wow.
copywriting was not good. So, he has courses. I probably spent, 15 to 20 grand being one of his golden students or whatever he called his gold program for a while. I paid to be in the VIP room and have coffee with him and hang out type of thing. But I learned a lot and I studied from some of the other guys. And I'll tell you right now, with all that training, I probably got 20 to 40, maybe close to 30 to $40,000 worth of training in copywriting. AI to this day can write a letter equivalent to something I would spend 3 to 4 days if you know how to prompt it right. Something that would take me 3 to 4 days to put together, it can do in 35 seconds. So I tell people,
It's crazy.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, it's like, look, depends on what you want for a copyright letter. If you can afford to have $100,000 copywriter spend 2 weeks and really dive in, and you can spend $100,000 getting your sales copy and your copyright for your website, AI is not going to beat that. But it'll beat your average $20,000 to $25,000 budget almost every time if you know how to prompt it. So
that's where the science comes in.
Yeah.
So we teach people how to write with using AI, and we have like different tiers that we recommend and sort of phases of it. Like for me, I basically do a lot of research outlining essentially as a escalated proofreader and editor, right? Where I'm still creating the copy, but I'm getting feedback from ChatGPT as this third-party editor and proofreader, and it's absolutely game changer. And so again, it goes to show kind of what you're saying is like I've been using an AI for 3 years. My business partner at Copy Sharks, he runs a 70-person writing agency, and you have to use AI if you want to get ahead of this. You have to know how to use it, and knowing how to use it is going to become the future. It's not going to do it on its own. It's not going to just, a busy entrepreneur isn't going to spend 6 to 12 weeks trying to figure it out. Maybe some of them will, but there's a lot of people who don't want to do that. They want to pay somebody who has those skill sets. So, I mean, the trends are there. The technology's here. Where it's at now, it's still, in my opinion, always going to require a human who knows how to use it, at least for the near future. So we want to teach people how to use it ethically, and how to use it so it's going to create a better output for their customer, right? So it's a fascinating space, and it's something that we're able to kind of have a unique technique. We've built our own custom GPTs for our students. We have really in-depth prompts that are being used at scale for an 8-figure writing agency. So it's a really cool sort of offer, because I think we know it works, and it's getting people ahead of the future of what's coming with AI, and especially in the writing space.
I just released our first custom GPT yesterday. I've got about 50 users on it right now from my personal network. But what I did is I took all 250 episodes and I took the transcripts from them and I put it in a single document worded correctly. And then a lot of the guys from the episodes gave me free ebooks. And then I took stuff like Stanford has a free guide to search funds. So as a legal paper docs, I fed it that. I fed it basically until it told me it couldn't take any more data. Like everything I could get that was given to me to hey, give this to your clients, give this to your customers. I fed it all that stuff. So now there's a small, medium business, an SMB, GTP for mergers and acquisitions. So it's just gives a lot more accurate questions when you say, hey, thinking about doing due diligence on buying a company. What are the steps I should look at? It's detailed, right? And people are loving it, but I'll still train it. I'll, as I find better valued content, I'll replace the things I filled it up with. So, and I did it for fun. I also trained it to plug this show and one of my newsletters about every 10 prompts. So
that's great.
So about every 10 prompts, I'll go, hey, have you subscribed to the YouTube channel? Or, hey, have you looked at this newsletter? So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it's great. I love the GPT stuff. You can build some really cool, interesting things. I use it every day basically now.
Yeah, I use it for almost everything these days. And then I train all my staff to use it too, all my VAs and editors and everything. So let's dive into, we only have a few minutes left, but let's talk about your preference. Like you said, software as a service and digital products. When you're talking digital products, are you talking things like courses and stuff like that? Because I'm in that world. I love newsletters, courses. I would go SaaS maybe if it's got a really good moat, right? I'm not a programmer. I did a little coding in the scripting languages when I was young. I was a Unix sysadmin for years. But I can write PHP if it still exists.
Yeah.
I can write, most scripting languages, for a Unix machine or a Linux machine or a Mac terminal. But other than that, I just don't have an interest in sitting there writing code myself.
Yeah, me either.
So I would definitely need to staff that up. And I see some of these cool no-code things. But when you buy a SaaS company, I can read code though. I mean, that's one thing that's strange is I was a software test engineer for Lockheed Martin, right?
Wow.
I sat there and read, no, I didn't write code, but I could sit there and read it all day long, right? I just don't enjoy the process of writing code.
Yeah.
But
so for me, for anybody who is in my acquisition program or even for my personal acquisitions, I always assess on how complicated the business is going to be. I've had one of my acquisitions where it hasn't needed updates for 3 years, right?
Wow.
But you still need to understand. It's more important to understand how to manage developers and hire good talent than for me it is to write code. I don't write code. So you have to have that macro and micro understanding for every acquisition. I'm usually having a code audit to figure out, is the code good? Is the structure good? But the main thing is whenever I'm doing a deal, of course the code is important, but I'm also wondering, what is the structure like? For these recent acquisitions, the two buyers on one deal, they have no coding experience, but they have a coding agency who's backing it at a fractional rate. They've been working with this SaaS business for years. They're really a good fit, and they're a perfect fit. The buyer is a perfect fit for this business, and that structure is coming over post acquisition, where these guys don't have the mindset. They don't want to become coders. They just want to operate the business, and they have the skills to do that and the team to do that. That's coming over in the deal. The other deal is the person's very technical, built, CTO at businesses, really just a perfect business. He's just looking, hey, this is a very simple, straightforward, passive business where you can work on it as much as you want or as little as you want. but he has that coding knowledge where he can do a lot of the work or just understand the right person to do that. And there's already like prior coders that we have coming over. So I would say it's more important to understand how to manage and hire developers than it is to necessarily be a super technical person. Like, you still need to have some tech skills. Like, if you can get on Zoom and, if you're familiar with WordPress, that's going to be great.
Right.
I've built a dozen WordPress websites and I understand that sort of thing. But a lot of the businesses that I'm helping with in that acquisition space some of them are custom, but a lot of them are plugins or software built on a WordPress kind of like as the front end, which can save a lot of time and money if it's built on WordPress versus like a custom built software.
I've done a lot of WordPress stuff myself. I haven't done it in years, but I'm a big fan of it. So yeah,
it's like 80% of the internet. So it's like, let's just say 80% of the acquisitions at Empire Flippers were, the websites, maybe 70% are, because a lot of them now are FBA where there's not usually a huge website component, but yeah, I would say the majority, still 60, 70% was WordPress. A big portion now is on Shopify, but usually it's like, 80% Amazon FBA. They just have a Shopify store if people come through. So again, I don't love the e-com space as much because the margins are low. There's a lot of, things outside of your control, and it's just a lot harder to scale without adding new products. With a software business, you can change the prices immediately. You can do, a million different things to grow the business. That's all kind of in your control. And I just love the recurring revenue aspect. And the main thing I love is businesses that don't have it set up, but you can turn it into that. That's a very low hanging fruit that I've seen on just about every acquisition I've had, where it's like, oh, they're only doing yearly, or they're doing one-time fee or lifetime. I'm like, hey, let's change this whole structure around to optimize for MRR and ARR. So I see a lot of opportunities in the software space and in the kind of the digital product space.
It's interesting. Sometimes you can find things that are mismarketed too, meaning that, like, I don't have permission to say the name of the software or the name of my friend, but I have a friend who bought a SaaS company, and I might get him on here someday. But he looked at this SaaS software, it's a specialized CRM, and said, you know what? There's enough. It was 6-figure purchase, right? It wasn't huge.
Yeah.
But he's like, there's enough here to replace my income, and I come from a background in the insurance space. I'll say that much. And almost every insurance broker that owns their own brokerage needs this tool. There's not a great one out for them, and I only have to make 2 new features inside of this to make it work for them. So he turned around and built, basically bought the company, created a second brand, right? Just like copied the code into another directory and renamed it to something that the insurance guys have liked. Had programmers come in and added the 2 new features. And now he does 3
just
times
white
that.
label it, yeah.
White labeled it, and it has the same code. He manages the code base on the same platform, so it's not like he diverged it. Now he has to manage 2 different things. The only thing he manages differently on the 2 things is the 2 or 3 features he needed for the other clients. So he just, anyway. So sometimes you can find really cool deals like where you look at it and go, that's awesome. Well, why didn't you ever market to these guys over here? They really need what you've got, right? So
a lot of times what I see with the deals is it's usually a 1 or 2 person dev focused team that they got the product market fit right, but they just don't know how to grow it to that next level because they don't have a marketing and sales background. And so their scope is just a little bit limited in that space. So it kind of takes somebody with a little bit of a different perspective to bring it to the next level, right? And so that's kind of the lens that I go into it, is like, okay, I see they've built something, it's very established, has good year over year, but they haven't changed the prices in 10 years, stuff like that, where I'm like, okay, this is a great opportunity to really grow the business quickly with a few clicks, right?
Let's demonstrate accessibility to the listeners today. What is the purchase price range that you work with for some of these, and what is the income they can get out of them pretty quickly? Meaning I could buy a company for, I don't know, $100,000, and it's going to produce $50,000 a year. So in 2 years, I get my money back. Plus I've got an income. Do you have that? Do you know the numbers off the top of your head for some of your price range?
Yeah. So my space in general is like 10 million and
Hmm.
below. I would say like the deals on the sell side are averaging around 3 to 4 million. In a business that size, like, it really depends. I can walk you through exact business. It was listed about 500K software business, making around $12,000 per month. So you can kind of see the price range there. That's in the software space.
Mm.
I've gotten a few deals where, again, with my negotiation techniques, I'm able to get some great deals for my buyers where we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars discounted off the price. But yeah, I would say a business, usually like the easiest way to think about it is usually it's 30 times at the bottom end, 30 times monthly net profit.
Hmm.
So if a business is making $10,000 a month over the trailing 12 months on average, $10,000 a month times 30, we're looking at $300,000 of valuation price. And that $300,000 business is generating about 10K per month in net profit, right? So that's on the low end. Something that's very, let's say, 10 years old, super big moat, that could be upwards to 60x. So you could be looking at the difference between a $300,000 business or a $600,000 business. And that's like from the buy side, that's where I see the most opportunity is in that range, because a lot of those businesses are too big for a solo buyer, but they're too small for any of the portfolio buyers to even look at. And so they sit on the marketplace, and then I can come in and really offer a unique deal structure where everyone's happy, everyone's walking away, getting a lot of money or getting a good deal. And so that's where I kind of swim in, as at least with a lot of people in my acquisition program, is around that 300 to 600K range.
Awesome. Well, we're running out of time. Let's do a three takeaways. If somebody can only remember two or three things from the show today, what would you want them to remember?
I would say like anything you guys want to do is possible. You can earn from anywhere in the world. I'm living proof of that. I've helped thousands of people do it. I think the number one thing stopping most people is themselves and their mindset. Unfortunately, most people need a catalyst in their life to make that drastic change. But again, I just gave a TED talk about how you can try to overcome that catalyst without it happening. So if you just search my name in TED Talk or TEDx, you'll find it. But yeah, I would say that's the biggest takeaway. Anything you want, you can achieve. You just have to, make the goals, have the dream, but have the goals along with it to actually make it come true. And there's no shortage of what you can achieve there.
Cool. If somebody wants to work with you, how do you want them to reach out to you?
Yeah, so just if anybody's interested, you can learn more about my programs or you can grab my book. Just go to globalcareerbook.com. It also has all of my social media. I would say I'm most active. Easiest place to contact me is Instagram. LinkedIn's pretty good, but I get about 10 to 15 messages on there a day. So it's pretty tough. I would say Instagram, or if you go to globalcareerbook.com, you can find my email or contact form through there.
I'll be sure to put all those in the show notes for you guys so that we have all the links to his social contacts and stuff. I want to thank you for your time, and we can call that and wrap that up and call it a show today.
Yeah, Ron, thanks so much for having me on. And again, if you guys have any questions, like I love hearing from people. Just say you heard about me from this podcast, and that gives me a little bit of context. And I always try to get back to everyone. So no
Awesome.
bad questions. I love hearing from people.
Cool. Well, hang out for just a second after this, and we'll call this a show. I want to announce our new channel partners, the ITX Marketplace. Since 1998, ITX has created $5 billion in value by selling more than 225 IT businesses in 20 countries. ITX works exclusively with IT-enabled businesses generating between $5 million and $30 million who are ready to be sold, and M&A decision makers who are ready to buy. For over 25 years, ITX has developed industry knowledge that helps determine whether a seller is a good fit for their buyers before making the match. ITX Mergers and Acquisition Marketplace we have partnered with has a proprietary database of 50,000 plus global buyers seeking IT service firms, managed service providers, Microsoft service providers, software as a service platforms, and channel partners with Microsoft, Oracle, ServiceNow, and the Salesforce space. If you have an IT-enabled business you're ready to sell, I want you to visit the itexchangenet.com/marketplace. How to exit. That link will be in the show notes. Visit them now.